At the start of the film, Danielle is getting ready for a deep ocean dive. The team lead lays out the schedule. Her group will be the last to survey the seabed near Iceland. The woman is downcast because her boyfriend is in Kenya and she hasn't seen him a month. Meanwhile, in Somalia, a hand reaches out of a hole in a wall. A boy tosses a nut into it. The nut is gobbled by a beaten captive. And he remembers. James secretly meets agents at a museum and discusses terrorists preparing attacks across Europe. James's source is ready to give them up in exchange for a British passport. To do that, the man will travel to Somalia, posing as a hydro-engineer. Inside one tooth, he has a GPS tracker. Before the trip, James takes a few days off and checks into a hotel on France's Atlantic coast. Danielle arrives there as well. In the morning, they meet on the beach, later bump into each other at the hotel, and decide to grab a bite together. But the woman gets swallowed by work and misses the agreed time. James comes by her room and asks what she does for a living. It turns out she's a professor, a biomathematician who builds mathematical models to study life in the oceans. Her favorite ocean, fittingly, is the Atlantic. Over dinner, the man asks her to tell him more about the ocean. The woman explains that it has 5 layers. She studies the very bottom one, Hades, which translates as the unseen, because it is total darkness there. That layer presses against the mantle where, it's believed, no life can exist, so biologists don't find it interesting. But Danielle believes it's a living zone, the renewal center of the world. James thinks she's smart, but states that in our world, power comes first, and education only after. The woman is impressed and jots down his thought. The man introduces himself as a water supply consultant. He jokes that they have something in common: water. The man lives in Nairobi, in a house with a pool. The pair takes a walk. James asks about Danielle's expedition. She has waited many years for the chance, and very soon she'll head out to sea for a full month. And if something goes wrong during a dive, could they fail to surface? There's oxygen in the submersible for 5 days, and no one will reach them, because the craft is the only one of its kind in Europe. Calmly, the woman describes how she would die, as if she has pictured it many times already. She notices a paratrooper's tattoo on James. The man steps up to a Normandy landings memorial and says that at this spot the paratroopers went to their slaughter. Every one of them was killed. Suddenly, Danielle undresses and sprints into the icy ocean. James, seeing her joy, laughs and wraps her in his jacket. Back at the hotel, they warm themselves by the fireplace. James points out that the woman avoids the words I and me. She asks where he learned to listen so closely. After all, people never learn without necessity. The man deflects with a joke. His favorite body of water, he says, is the human body, which is mostly made of water. They head toward their rooms. James notices Danielle's hair is still damp. She calls him timid and leaves her door open behind her. They kiss and stay together in private. Food is tossed to James on the floor of his cell. It's rotten and crawling with worms, but he's starving, so he shovels the mush into his mouth. He retches. Danielle wakes up on the research ship and dials James's number, but he's unreachable. At that very moment, he's being beaten for speaking out loud, yet he keeps talking to his beloved, saying the darkness in his dungeon feels like the depths of the ocean. And once, back at the hotel, they were together. In the morning, his colleagues had sent James photos of Somali terrorists, Yusuf and Saif. The first runs an Al-Qaeda cell. The second is a failed suicide bomber, very cruel and utterly unafraid of death. By day, he and Danielle stroll along the coast. The woman is tense. James figures it's because of the previous night. She says she usually doesn't date men, but works. She wants to know James more closely, but the man tries to change the subject. The woman asks him straight out what's hardest about military service. He answers, the nearness of death. Danielle had read that people think about death when they fall in love. James says that in the face of love, death retreats. And has he ever loved? He doesn't answer, but declares it's time for her to swim, and carries her into the ocean fully clothed. They spend the evening together as well. Danielle grew up in a wealthy family, and her father worked all over the world. Her parents brought her here many times. James says only that he's British, not poor, and can afford a vacation in a place like this. They discuss whether the planet could run out of oxygen. Danielle says they need to get down to the bottom of the problem. James teases her sense of humor. At night, she touches his little wrinkles and says they'll stay for life. He replies that he'll remember this moment. After a passionate night, Danielle declares she wants to swim in his pool in Nairobi. James smiles and says nothing. In the morning, he has to leave. He sees a newspaper piece about bombings in Europe. He hands it to Danielle to read. The woman says it's hard for her to look at such things because you can't do anything about them. The roots are ancient conflicts and religious rifts. James is angered that she thinks there is no solution. He draws a parallel with her work. The truth lies in the ocean in darkness, but nobody wants to know about it. You can present information, get people interested, and involve them in solving the problem, because this is our world. Danielle isn't sure this world is ours. The man lets slip that she might be foolish, but he immediately apologizes. A taxi arrives. Looking into Danielle's eyes, James says he's in deep. She answers that it seems she is too. A farewell kiss, and he drives off. The woman calls him right away. She already misses him. He stops the car and is ready to come back, but she jokes that she'll go for a swim. And now James is on the plane inserting his chip. On the ground, he goes to meet his contact Sharif, but instead he's taken to a hangar and beaten. Later, in confinement, James says you cannot let death take over your thoughts, because there is love and mercy in the world. Danielle is in the ship's lab, and her colleagues talk about her because she's pacing as if she wants to quit everything. She has to pull herself together, because the expedition is unique, and they're close to a discovery that will change how we see the scale of life on Earth. The woman calls James, but without success. She recalls their talk about terrorists. She believes conflicts arise because history leaves some people overboard, and he thinks it is another kind of people, gifted with a fierce capacity for faith. The next day, the first group, Danielle's colleagues, dives successfully, and mobile service drops out. James is dragged out of a building and thrown into a dungeon. He says out loud that he is now at the very bottom of the ocean. He catches precious drops of water falling from the roof. Armed men come and march him to the shore of the Indian Ocean, telling him to prepare for death. The man walks into the waves and prays. He hears a gunshot behind him, and he involuntarily relieves himself. He pulls down his trousers and laughs hysterically. A guard gives him a scarf to cover himself. James lies in the surf and thinks he can see Danielle's face. The man is shackled inside a room. Nearby, they pray, and then the terrorist Yusuf questions him. James lies that he came to build a water pipeline at Sharif's invitation through a charity. Yusuf asks about the tattoo. The man answers that it was a youthful mistake. The bandit presses a rifle to his throat, but changes his mind. He declares he'll call him Bioli, the water bearer. James is allowed to wash and is taken to Dr. Shadid, who draws blood for tests. He has fractured ribs and a head wound. James asks the doctor to let him contact his family, but the doctor refuses. And the woman has climbed into the submersible, and she's terrified. She's jittery and smashes a sample in the lab. She tells a colleague it's because her phone gets no signal. They're too far out in the ocean. The colleague asks her to throw the man out of her head and focus on the work. They're searching for forms of life similar to what was found on Mars. Billions of years ago, ecosystems there and on Earth were comparable. The colleague sums up that Danielle has touched the edges of life, and they need to grab those edges and present them to the world. This is no time to drift. The woman asks the captain for permission to go ashore, saying she supposedly has issues with her calculations. It's decided she'll stay on the Faroe Islands and then fly to Iceland afterward. James has lunch with Shadid. Shadid says they need to stop pumping banned substances into suicide bombers because it keeps them from thinking straight. In Mogadishu and Pakistan, it was shameful to look at them. The man asks why he's telling him this. Because he won't be here much longer, the doctor replies, adding that he won't be killed. Yusuf promised. It's just that there's no one to talk to here, not a single educated person. They discuss the region's well problems. Water is unaffordable for the poor. James gives practical advice. Shadid describes another trouble. After rains, sewage from pit latrines leaks into the water, and soon a plague pandemic will start from Somalia. The Brit asks if they're going to turn plague into a weapon. Shadid strikes him and says he's a doctor. A doctor who works with killers, James adds. It turns out the country already has cholera. The physician shouts that the UN is useless here. They just need to drive the Crusaders out of a Muslim land. The Brit clarifies whether Shadid considers him bad too, since he gives people water. Allah sees everything, Shadid answers. And Danielle is already counting lichens on rocks in the Faroe Islands. The scientist writes to James that she wants to tell him what she's seeing. And in Somalia, a woman is being stoned to death. Shadid pretends not to hear. The wretched woman is defended by her little son, but they shoot him. The doctor operates on the boy, then comes to James and won't meet his eyes. The man asks to be allowed to leave, and the doctor says he himself will soon be killed, and he's glad of it. The Brit is brought into a room where men are watching television. Yusuf says they want to use his knowledge of water, but he must accept Islam, and the entire process will be filmed. However, James refuses. Yusuf orders Saif to take the man to a mangrove forest, and if he won't change his mind, to shoot him. On the way, the terrorist sees through a window a family watching a variety show and tosses a grenade into the house. Then James is driven long hours deep into the country. Suddenly, Saif asks if it's cool working for British intelligence and adds that James's colleagues don't care about him. They arrive at a place where suicide belts are assembled. In the morning, James hears that a US military base in Kenya is nearby. The border is close. The man activates his chip, repeating that he doesn't want to die today. Danielle descends into the abyss of the ocean. The scientists collect samples of new life forms, and suddenly the power goes out. Surfacing is dangerous. There's a rock overhead, and they could smash into it. Danielle says bleakly that they'll become building blocks for new life forms. But the backup power kicks in, and they rise from darkness toward the light. Saif preaches at James to accept Islam. The man replies in Arabic, quoting the Quran, "There is no compulsion." Suddenly, American helicopters appear. Saif drops his weapon and prays, while James says he's going to Danielle and dives into the ocean. The helicopters bomb the site. The man screams in the water from pain, but then he rises toward the white light where the face of his beloved girl shines. This is the end of the film. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this film, and see you in new videos.